Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you think Squad 44 is just too difficult and you're getting shot from left, right, and center without having the faintest clue about where you got shot from? Well, I've got a video that will help you out in this situation. We'll be talking about some advanced infantry only tips to survive and fight back in Squad 44, aka Scriptum. First things first, this is a milsim game. A milsim game is a game that strives to provide an experience of combat, simulate battlefield missions, or replicate military service style tactics. If you come from a Call of Duty, Battlefield, Fortnite, or similar arcade shooters, then it's high time you realize that Squad 44 is very different from those games. And a single well-aimed bullet to your chest can decide your fate in the battlefield. Now that we know what kind of game Squad 44 is, we come to our first tip: awareness. Being aware of all that is happening around you is very important to survive in a battlefield. A good infantry soldier is always aware of his surroundings. Observation, both visual and audible, play important roles here. Like I always tell you, running and gunning never works in Squad 44. You need to run, stop, observe, and run again every time you try to get closer to your capture point. This way, it is easier for you to notice the muzzle flash from enemy weapons or any type of enemy soldier or vehicle in front of you. Similarly, keeping your eyes active for any type of information you get from your squad mates is also important to locate the enemy position and have a general understanding about where they might be hiding. Every weapon in Squad 44 has a very distinct sound to it, so you can always tell which weapon is being fired from where and tell if it's enemy weapon or a friendly weapon. Similarly, each vehicle in Squad 44 also have their own engine sound to distinguish from. Additionally, listening to footsteps and rustling in the bush can be useful, but make sure to yell "flash" in the proximity voice channel, and if you don't hear someone saying "thunder" back at you, then that's probably an enemy. Verbal countersign confirmation like this is important to avoid unnecessary friendly casualty. Now that we have the most basic tip out of the way, we can talk about the interesting tip like concealment. To defend a capture point, we have to pick our safe spot. Let it be a ditch, house, or the foliage around us. But concealing ourselves while being in these spots can be very effective if we know how to use the shadow to our advantage. You're less visible if you're hiding in a bush that has shadow on it than a bush that is under the broad sunlight. Same thing applies to a house. If there is any sort of light source falling on your character while being inside the house, then it might get you spotted by the enemy easily. This also applies to other milsim games like Rising Storm 2 and Hell Let Loose. I've seen people hiding under a bush and not get spotted even if the enemy is standing on top of them. Now let's talk about our next tip: movement. How your character moves in milsim games is very different to how they move in arcade shooters. You're much slower while moving, vaulting, and going into prone position. So it is important to time your movement accordingly. To avoid getting shot during close encounters, it is important to get yourself familiarized with the leaning and peeking mechanics. Unlike Call of Duty and Battlefield games, Squad 44 has leaning and peeking keys. Bind it to Q and E on your keyboard. These actions can be pretty quick and can be useful while clearing out rooms indoors, and can sometimes be useful at mid-range during a firefight to confuse the enemy. In case if you get spotted by an enemy and you don't have any idea where they are shooting from, then going down to prone position is not always a good idea. If the enemy fire sounded like it came from far away, then there is very little chance for you to survive next time he shoots you. So the best course of action here would be to zigzag your way out of there to get behind some cover. Or if you have some kind of uneven landscape which might block off his bullets, then you need to go down to prone position in this particular scenario. Now if you get spotted by an enemy that is rather close to you, then you need to find the general direction they are shooting from and try to suppress them to move yourself behind a nearby cover and go around them to flank. Breaking off the sight from the enemy is very important in the above scenarios. And last but not the least, never ever peek the same corner or window. Always be on the move and try to find a way to flank. Now that you know how to get away from sudden encounters, let's talk about how to evade from machine gunners and snipers. You might have noticed, unlike Hella Luz, every soldier has 2 smoke grenades in their inventory in Squad 44. It's time to make use of them here. While being fired at from more static positions like a MG nest or a sniper who might be camping in a building or foliage, you need to get behind some immediate cover and throw out some smoke grenades to conceal your movement to a better cover. So keep in mind, running out in an open field will not help here and will end badly for you and any other fellow soldier near you. Once you're out of the harm's way, it's time to hunt these machine gunners and snipers. Remember that the MG and snipers are effective at medium and long ranges and are vulnerable at close ranges. Because the MG uses their bipods to shoot accurately and the sniper uses their scope to look further and has zero visual around him. Make sure to go crouch and sneak up on them as you have an upper hand on them in close range. Next up, we have teamwork. 2 or more soldiers are better than 1. Moving along with your squad is very helpful to get more firepower and flanking abilities, especially if you are a new player. You can also ask fellow soldiers from other squads to help you out during firefights if you all are at the same spot. Make callouts on enemy positions and how you want to approach them with your teammates to execute coordinated attacks. A good weapon does not make a good soldier. A good soldier knows how to make any weapon effective, even if it's a knife, so let's talk about weapons. Getting yourselves acquainted with the various types of weapons in Squad 44 is very important. Understanding their recoil patterns, number of rounds they hold, and their fire rate is useful during firefights. Bolt action guns are best for long range and medium range combat. The semi-auto rifles are the best in all ranges from close, medium to long ranges, while the submachine guns are good for CQB and the assault rifles are great at medium and close ranges. Understanding the bullet drop is also important. You can set your zeroing in bolt action rifles as well, just like you set them for the sniper rifle. You can also set the zeroing on anti-tank weapons like Panzerfaust, bazooka, etc. And keep in mind that every weapon has their own range and bullet drop affecting them. You might want to hit the firing range to test out all the weapons before you deploy in the battlefield. Sometimes you might be wondering how an enemy player can outmaneuver you in some cases and can predict your movements. Here we come to map knowledge. Familiarizing yourself with the map is very important in any shooter game. It's a no-brainer to learn the maps to predict the enemy offensive and which direction or route they might come from. Especially if you are a squad leader, finding out the best spots to set up your camp to hold off the enemy advance and to get a hold of the general layout in the maps is also helpful. You can take your sweet time learning it if you join an empty server as a squad leader and go around the map and use the binoculars to check out the landscape. Or you can learn it while playing the game and from your mistakes while you're engaging with the enemy. Next up, I want to talk about tactics and roleplay. In my previous Squad 44 tutorial video, I talked about the various soldier roles we have in Squad 44. It is important to know your role in a squad as it only strengthens tactical effectiveness as a squad. I'll put the link to that video down in the description and it will also pop out for you on the screen at the top right corner now. Tactics in games like Squad 44, Squad, Arma 3 and any other milsim game is very important. If you're lucky, you might get a good squad leader who communicates and plays tactically. Each soldier has their own individual roles to play and it is important for you to obey your squad leader. Suppression and flanking play a vital role in Squad 44. You must have noticed that the guns don't have a sight on them except for the sniper rifle in Squad 44. Unlike Battlefield 5 where everyone is running around with a red dot sight on their gun, no sights on the guns makes it tad bit difficult for anyone to shoot at their targets accurately, and here suppression plays an important role. The machine gunners and automatic weapon users are the ones who suppress the enemy and the others try to go around and flank the enemy. It's a very basic tactic, but it is still very effective till date. Other tactics include calling in fire support and smoke barrage before you attack the enemy positions. Unlike Hell Let Loose, which has infinite amount of player stamina, Squad 44 has limited stamina. The stamina system in Squad 44 is slightly different from Squad. Instead of a gradually fast stamina regeneration once you stop any movement in Squad, Squad 44 has a canteen system, very much like what we have in Enlisted. Every soldier is equipped with a flask that holds water which you can drink to give you temporary stamina refill boost. Without it, your stamina will increase gradually over time if you don't sprint, crouch walk, or crawl, but it's much slower. You might have noticed me hydrating more often in my videos before I get into enemy positions. There is a reason for it. If your stamina meter is almost drained and has an orange color on it, or if it's completely drained, then that means you will have difficulty in stabilizing your aiming downsides. And you won't be able to zoom in either by pressing the shift key while aiming. So keep that in mind and don't forget to hydrate before you attack a capture point. Next up, I want to talk about hip firing. Hip firing your weapon works out pretty well, mostly during CQB. Now this is something that needs some practice from your end. By hip firing, I mean not using your iron sights on the weapon and instead firing it while holding the weapon normally. In Squad 44, you don't have a crosshair like you do in Call of Duty games. So in this case, you need to have an imaginary crosshair in your mind to be able to do this. If you play a lot of first-person shooter games, then this might come to you naturally. Or maybe you never tried doing it. I say it's about high time you started practicing this. During close quarter combat, instead of using your iron sights, just try shooting the gun from the hip. And with some practice, it will eventually come to you. Remember, CQB encounters can mean life or death in a fraction of seconds, and using your iron sights takes away those valuable seconds. And as a bonus tip, I want to talk about experience. In Squad 44, you don't have a leveling up system like you do in other games. So when I'm talking about experience, I'm talking about you gaining some knowledge after every time you lose a fight. You can also try to record some gameplay and later check that footage to understand what you did wrong in that very moment that caused your demise and how you could have done that in a different way. How you could have approached the enemy to kill them without getting shot. Or let's say if you're a squad leader, then how you could have led your squad better to reduce the overall casualty and increase the output. Basically, the leveling up happens in your mind and not in game. Strategizing every scenario is very important in Squad 44. And sometimes being aggressive also works out in your favor while the enemy is still thinking how to counter you. But choosing these options always depends on you and in some cases on pure luck. So never get demotivated if you get killed too much in games like Squad 44 or other milsim games. These games are built different and surviving in Squad 44 is never easy. Try to think tactical and move tactical. I hope these tips will help you to become a better soldier in Squad 44. And if these did, then make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. Also, I'm pretty sure I might have missed some tips, so if any of you have some more to add into these, please feel free to put them down in the comments to help a fellow soldier out. And that concludes my video on how to become a better soldier in Squad 44. Rhino signing out.